Have you ever felt lost in the crowd? An anonymous face, carrying a pain no one sees, a suffering that isolates you even when you're surrounded by people. You smile, you function, but inside, a silent hemorrhage is draining your life, your hope, your resources. You feel unclean, unworthy, and your condition becomes your secret identity. In the Gospels of Mark, Matthew, and Luke, we find a nameless woman. She is defined by her affliction, a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 long years. 12 years of physical weakness. 12 years of religious isolation, as her condition made her unclean, forbidden to touch others or to enter the temple. 12 years spending all she had on doctors, but the text says she was no better, but rather grew worse. She was incurable, untouchable, and invisible. But one day, she heard about a man named Jesus, and an impossible idea, a strategy of audacious faith, was born in her desperate heart. What if she could just touch him? Without asking, without speaking, without being noticed. Would it be possible to steal a miracle in the middle of the crowd? This message is for you who feel hopeless. For you who have spent all your resource, emotional, financial, spiritual, and have not found healing. For you who feel unclean, disqualified from approaching God. The journey of this anonymous woman to the hem of Jesus' garment is perhaps the greatest demonstration of desperate, focused faith in the entire Bible. It is proof that you don't need to be in the front row. You don't need to have a well-known name. You don't even need an audience with the King. You just need a touch. By the end of this video, we will unlock the secret behind this touch of faith. Why was this touch different from all the other touches of the crowd pressing in on Jesus? And what was the question he asked that transformed a secret miracle into a public testimony that echoes to this day? Brothers and sisters, prepare to enter the most important crowd in history. We will feel the press, the chaos, and the determination of a woman who decided that this would be her last day of suffering. Stay with me, because today we are going to learn how to touch Jesus in a way that releases power. This woman's ordinary world was a private hell. 12 years, 4,380 days. Every day, waking up with the same weakness, the same shame. The law of Moses was clear. She was ceremonially unclean. Everything she touched became unclean. The bed where she slept, the chair where she sat. This meant she could not hug her children, could not be intimate with her husband, could not enter the synagogue or the temple to worship. It was a sentence of social and spiritual death. And to make matters worse, the Gospel of Mark tells us she had suffered much under many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was no better, but rather grew worse. Her world was a cycle of pain, isolation, and poverty. The leper in Matthew 8, his disease also made him a social outcast, forced to live outside the community and to cry out, "Unclean, unclean," so that no one would come near. The ordinary world of the untouchables is loneliness. What is the chronic issue of blood in your life? An emotional wound that won't heal? A sin that haunts you? A situation that drains your strength and makes you feel unclean before God and men? The call to adventure did not come as a vision or an audible voice. It came as a rumor in the streets. She had heard the reports about Jesus. Mark 5:27. Faith comes by hearing. She heard the stories. The paralytic who walked, the leper who was cleansed, the blind man who saw. Each testimony was a seed of hope planted in her barren soil of despair. Her call was the possibility that this man, this Jesus, could be different from all the doctors, that he might have the power that no money could buy. The adventure would be to leave her isolation, to break the rules of her uncleanness, and to risk everything for one last chance. She heard of the wisdom of Solomon and traveled a great distance, bringing gifts to prove it for herself. Her call also began with hearing about. Hope often begins with a testimony. If the testimony of Jesus' power has ever given you hope, comment, I heard, and I believe. The refusal is the cry of all her limitations. How can I get near him? She was weak from the loss of blood. She was unclean, and if she touched someone on the way, she would be violating the law and defiling the person. And the text says that a great crowd followed him and thronged about him. The crowd was a physical barrier and a huge risk. She could be crushed, trampled. Worse, she could be recognized and publicly humiliated and expelled for her audacity. The refusal is the voice of reason that says, "It's impossible. It's too dangerous. Stay where you are." They saw the promised land, but refused to enter because of the fear of the giants and the fortified cities. Fear is the greatest enemy of the promise. I knew I needed help, but the idea of exposing myself, of going to the front at church, of telling my problem, paralyzed me. The fear of what others would think was my crowd. The master, the mentor, who guides her, is the revelation born in her spirit. She had no teacher, but she had an epiphany of faith. She formulated a plan. For she said to herself, "If I touch even his garments, I will be made well." This sentence is one of the most powerful declarations of faith in the Bible. It was not a superstition. It was a strategy born of conviction. She understood that Jesus' power was not confined to his hands or his voice. Power emanated from him. His holiness was so potent that even the hem of his garment was imbued with virtue. This revelation became her map, her compass, her mentor. The centurion's faith, he also had a revelation. "Lord, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only say the word, and my servant will be healed." He understood that Jesus' authority transcended physical presence. Faith is the strategy that connects us to the power of God. If you want to grow in faith, follow this channel and comment, "Lord, increase my faith." She crosses the threshold. Faith becomes action. The text says she came up behind him in the crowd. Imagine the scene. The weak, anemic woman using every ounce of her strength to push her way through. Every push, every elbow was a struggle. Every step was an act of defiance against her disease and against the rules of society. She was not going for a stroll. She was on a combat mission. She was fighting for her life. Crossing the threshold was the first push, the decision that neither chaos nor condemnation would stop her. They also faced the crowd. When they couldn't get in through the door, they climbed onto the roof and lowered their friend. Determined faith always finds a way. Faith without works is dead. Like this video now as a prophetic act, declaring that you will act on the faith God has given you. The final test presents itself. The entire crowd is thronging Jesus. Hundreds of touches, accidental touches, curious touches, pushing touches. The enemy here is banality. It is contact without intention. It is proximity without faith. The woman's only ally is her singularity of purpose. While everyone was touching Jesus' body, she was the only one trying to touch his power. The test was whether her touch, a forbidden, anonymous, and desperate touch, would stand out amidst so many others. The crowd prevented him from seeing Jesus. The tree was his ally, his strategy to overcome the obstacle and have a personal encounter above the generic contact of the crowd. Jesus was being pushed from all sides, but only one touch made him stop. What was it about that touch that made him feel that power had gone out from him? The answer changes everything we think about prayer and faith. In your life, have you been having casual contact with Jesus, going to church, listening to songs, or have you been seeking an intentional touch of faith that accesses his power? She approaches the darkness, the climax of her journey. She is close. She can see the dust on his feet. She can see the hem of his garment, the tzitzit, the tassels that every Jewish man wore in compliance with the law. For her, that simple cloth was the border between death and life. The darkness is the last effort, crawling, stretching, with her heart pounding in her throat. The fear of discovery mixed with the explosion of hope. It is the moment before contact, the silence before the explosion. She walked through the inner court, not knowing if the king would extend the golden scepter or sentence her to death. That walk was her approach to the darkness, where her fate would be sealed. God honors the desperate effort of faith. If you are stretching out to touch him today, like this video. The ultimate ordeal. Her fingers touch the fabric. And in the same instant, two things happened simultaneously. In her, immediately the flow of blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed. In him, Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out from him. The Greek word for power is dunamis, from which we get dynamite, divine energy. Her touch acted like a switch. She didn't touch a man. She accessed the source of heavenly power. And Jesus, the source, felt the withdrawal of energy. The miracle happened. When Uzziah touched the ark improperly, he died. The power of God is real and reacts to touch. This woman's touch of faith, however, did not bring death, but life, because it was a touch of dependence, not of presumption. What was different about that touch? It was a touch that demanded something. It was not passive. It was active. It was a touch that believed there was power available and deliberately accessed it. Her faith acted as a conduit that pulled the dunamis from Jesus into her sick body. Declare by faith, I stretch out my hand to touch the power of Jesus. The reward is the total and instantaneous healing she feels in her body. The source dried up. 12 years of suffering ended in a second. She did it. Her audacious plan worked. She could now sneak back into anonymity with her secret and her miracle. The reward was the restoration of her health, her dignity, and her future. She received exactly what her faith asked for, and immediately he recovered his sight. The healing that comes from Jesus is often instantaneous, a sign that the power that performs it is not progressive, but absolute. God still heals today. If you believe in the healing power of Jesus, comment, Jesus is my healer. But the road back to anonymity is interrupted. Jesus stops. He turns around. And he asks the strangest question, who touched my garments? His disciples are confused. You see the crowd pressing around you, and yet you say, who touched me? They saw the physical contact. Jesus felt the contact of faith. This is her road back from the secret miracle to the public testimony. Jesus would not let her leave with an anonymous healing. He wanted to give her something more. Jesus exposed him publicly, but to honor him, not to shame him. Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. The resurrection is her transformation from an anonymous outcast into an affirmed daughter. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. She exposes herself. And Jesus' response is the resurrection of her identity. He does not rebuke her. He lifts her up. He says, daughter. He gives her a family identity. He connects her to the Father. He doesn't say, my power has healed you. He says, your faith has made you well. He credits the miracle to her, and he blesses her. Go in peace and be healed of your disease. She doesn't just leave healed. She leaves saved, in peace, and with a name, daughter. He came out of the tomb, but was still wrapped in grave clothes. Jesus ordered, unbind him and let him go. Jesus not only heals us, he publicly frees us from our shrouds. The elixir, the eternal truth that she takes with her and leaves us as a legacy, is the secret of the touch of faith. It's not about the crowd. It's not about your position. It's not about your dignity. It's about your desperate, focused, and intentional faith. The elixir is the revelation that faith is the hand that reaches out and connects with the grace of God, releasing the power that can change everything in an instant. She returns to life not just with a healed body, but with the wisdom of how to access the power of heaven. It is our mandate to teach people this same secret, that by faith, they too can touch Jesus and be saved and healed. Jesus is passing through your crowd today. The crowd of your problems, your tasks, your anxieties. And many are just pressing him with superficial contact. But he is looking for a different touch. The touch of someone who says, "I've tried everything. I've spent everything I had. My last hope is him. If I can only touch him." Your incurable condition does not shock Jesus. Your uncleanness does not repel him. What moves his heart and releases his power is the touch of your desperate faith. Stop being just part of the crowd. Be the person who stops the crowd. Reach out the hand of your faith right now, right where you are. Touch him with your need. Touch him with your conviction. It doesn't have to be a shout. It can be the whisper of your heart saying, "Lord, just one touch from you can change my story." The power is available. The source is passing by. Reach out. This woman's faith saved her. Not the crowd, not the disciples, not her own strength, her faith. And the same promise is for you. Your faith has the power to connect you with the miracle you need. Go in peace and be healed. If this message has activated your faith to seek the touch of Jesus, subscribe to this channel now and turn on the bell. We want to help you strengthen your faith every day. Who do you know that needs a miracle today? Who feels lost in the crowd? Be a bearer of hope. Share this video with that person and declare your own faith by commenting below. Hashtag I'm going to touch him. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." Mark 5:34.